Everyone, we're the Villains Man. I'm JVD.
I'm Smiley. And today in D&D, Dungeons and Discusses, we'll be talking about Divine Intervention.
If you haven't watched our video for Wish yet, you can watch it with this because you can kind of play along with that spell based on this power, even though you get it at a lot lower level, but this one's more precise.
Yeah.
So before we start, I'll read Divine Intervention from the Cleric. Beginning at 10th level, you can recall on your deity to intervene on your behalf when your need is great. Imploring your deity's aid requires you to use your action, describe the assistance you seek, and roll percentile dice. If you roll a number equal to or lower than your cleric level, your deity intervenes. The DM chooses the nature of the intervention. The effect of a cleric spell or cleric domain spell would be appropriate. If your deity intervenes, you can't use this feature again for 7 days. Otherwise, you can use it again after you finish a long rest. At 20th level, you call for intervention succeeds automatically. No roll required.
But you can't do it again for 7 days.
I have an issue with that.
What's that?
We play in Forgotten Realms, everything's a 10-day.
I know, right?
So I don't get that. And so far as 5e, all the modules, I don't know about Strahd, are all...
Strahd can be used...
It can be used anyway. It's like a demon plane, right?
Yeah.
They're all Faroon, so it's all Del Reckoning calendar, so it's all 10 days. So maybe it's an error.
But does the Underdark use Del Reckoning calendar?
I don't know. It's a good question. I would assume.
Does other continents use it? Because it's only as like a Cormyrean things where it started at.
Yeah, but I see them as the U.S. U.S. just rules everything, so everybody goes by what we want. It's like where everybody's like,
it's official.
We're metric.
The Sword Coast
standard.
Is the U.S.
So there we go. So Divine Intervention as the DM.
Yeah.
I wish I would have had this fighting Demogorgon here recently.
You know,
but I was 6 levels short.
Yeah, I thought about giving it to you, but at the same time, it wouldn't fit with what's going on.
I don't think I would have wanted that as a player.
Yeah.
Because, for one, I'm too low level for anything like that. And I kind of feel that deities, the more higher level you get is when they really start paying attention to your character. Yeah. So, the DM chooses the nature of the intervention. The effect of any cleric spell or cleric domain spell would be appropriate. Now, let's flip over here to cleric spells real fast. So this could be a 9th level cleric spell. What is the highest level 9th level cleric spell you can get here? True Resurrection. Yeah. So there's a chance you can cast a 9th level spell of True Resurrection
at level 10.
At level 10. Let's see. So level 10, you require an equal or lower than your level character. The deity intervenes on dice roll. 10%. Would you count? Because there's no zeros, double odds. That's 100. So yeah, that is extremely difficult to get at 10th level.
Yeah.
So
I would actually simplify that to roll a d10. If you get a 1, you get it.
Yeah, you could. Yeah. But yeah, I mean your outcome's just basically the same there. It's just on a smaller dice. Because some people, even new players, have trouble realizing what's 100 and if it's 0. So I've seen that happen before. Mm-hmm. So we just thrown out the example. Just say if I had level 10, and when I fought Demogorgon, and my guy, I feel like you done this on purpose and backed me into this corner and made me fight Demogorgon. I guess you
took that upon yourself.
Hey, you could say I had Divine Intervention with disadvantage. I made my will save.
Yeah.
So.
And I restored all your hit points and spell slots.
So, see, technically I did have Divine Intervention. But let's just say I called upon this with this fight with me and Fishface. Yeah. How would you have played this out if I had rolled it?
It would depend on what was going on. Because Fishface was an inside joke. Yeah. Shushar was an inside joke for me.
Yeah.
Because he was a pacifist, he never would fight. I played him to die off screen, so I made him level 17 monk. Just as a joke. Depending on what specific, like what your exact wording was with the intervention, it could have really tipped the scale.
Well, okay, being worshipping Silverbeard, as we Whitehammer brothers had been doing, I would have asked for the power to defeat Demogorgon. What would you have given me? Oh, whipping out the monster manual here.
Because
a beholder. Well, I don't know if a beholder would have helped me there.
That.
You would have gave a and I would have been insulted because a Solar Ranger doesn't have a beard.
It would be a dwarven one. You would see a dwarf with wings coming down with a giant flaming sword.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it is a CR 20...
I just meant an angel in general, but yeah.
Well, I mean, it's your interpretation. 21? Doesn't have to be one, but yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, and maybe then I would have stood a chance.
Yeah.
But
the way it happened, you died fighting. Died as a warrior and a soldier, as the Silverbeard would have wanted.
The one thing I have a problem with this, I wish it would give some examples of what you could do, just like we talked about with Wish. But you call the spell up from a Pathfinder, because I have a handy app on my phone. You can swing the tide of battle in your favor by raising fallen allies to continue fighting. Yeah. Moving you and your allies with all your and their gear from one plane to a specific locale through planar barriers with no chance of error. So actually you get a teleport spell as great as you can command it. Protecting a city from an earthquake, volcanic eruption, flood, or other major natural disaster. Natural disaster. Think about it, that might be something I would have done. Yeah. To protect Slublodop from Demogorgon. Yeah. So what would you have done there? I
would have put up a barrier around the city. If you would have got that 10% chance, I would have put up a barrier around the city.
And just he would have not... Would the barrier stay there as long as Demogorgon was on the prime material plane, or just for as long as I was there?
The exact intervention was to protect the Slublodop from Demogorgon. Mm-hmm. It would only affect Demogorgon, but it would be indefinite.
Okay. So, out of game, even though we don't know, there are more demon lords in the Underdark at this time. Yes. So it would have not repelled them.
No.
So you would have been that Pacific.
Yes.
Cool. All right. As a DM, much like Wish, I have a problem getting this at 10th level. It is a very powerful thing for such midway through class.
Outside of it being thematic in the moment, if you were to use it, it would just be duplicating a spell for me. I would just assign it a spell that would help.
So based on kind of what you just said, do you think at higher levels you would grant stuff better than just the spells? Because you've become more, I would say at higher levels, more closer to your deity.
Depends on whether or not I think you'd have it. If it's one of those things like you're doing in the middle of a high-level combat, but I think you have the combat, like you can win anyways, with or without it, then it would just be like duplicating like a level 9 Flame Strike.
Which we just talked about. Would you allow True Resurrection at 10th level with Divine Intervention?
Yes.
Because, see, years ago, I'd actually had... I'm going to tell a quick story. I've actually had Divine Intervention called upon me in a game one time, and this is back there in 3.5, and I hated it.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't... It was weird. It was a Dwarven Cleric that done it, now that I think about it. And for one, we were just like level maybe 7, and I hated it. Because my friend, who I will not mention, was like... as a druid, my animal companion had died. Died in my service. Yeah. He did what he was supposed to do, which I was very happy for. And he was like, hey, DM... can you give me some percentiles for Divine Intervention so I can bring his animal companion back? And I was like, I don't want that. And he was like, but I'm not going to let our fallen comrade here suffer. It was the only member of the party that had died. And I was very mad about it. And especially even as a DM, because I'd been DMing up to that point, that, here we are 7th level and you're already granting Divine Interventions, basically wishes, from a deity. Yeah. And I that just did not sit well with me.
You see, in my opinion, it just wouldn't work.
Well, here's the thing. He rolled a 99%. Like, I'll never forget it. He was like, sure. And this is before this even come up. And I swear everything I got. He said, you can roll me a 91% or higher, which would be 10%. Yeah. He was like, I'll grant your request. And he was like, boom, 99%. And we were just like, damn. And it happened. So and that's kind of like which I don't mind the I thought it was great that he put like a cap there, like, well, it's gonna be really hard to get this, and it happened, which is what it is here. But I don't think it should have been allowed at such a low level. It's almost kind of like a cheat.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not big on this. I mean, it's...
But to be fair, if anyone's going to cheat in the game, it might well be the ones backed by a god.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I agree with that. Now, we talked about this with Wish.
Yeah.
Say you worship an evil god.
Oh, yes.
Do you think there's drawback to this?
My opinion is if your intervention will be something outside of the bounds of what the god would ask, or what outside the bounds of what would be okay for that god, it wouldn't work to begin with. Because your god wouldn't okay that.
Okay, so say... I always go back to Amadeus. So say I had died, and you asked to bring me back.
Yeah.
If there's some chance my soul was going to the hills to Amadeus, would you as a DM not let Amadeus let that happen because that's a soul he's gained?
Asmodeus wants souls to fight the blood war.
Mm-hmm.
That's his whole thing. One soul now or one soul stronger later.
I'm not following.
If the stronger you are, like the higher position you could have.
I got you. Okay, 7th level, just like I'd mentioned.
Yeah. Well, you don't get it till 10th.
No, but I'd mention. Okay, so I was 7th level when my animal companion
Yeah.
died. Would you think you would just let that come back then because it's not that powerful of a soul?
I don't think animals have souls being within D&D. I'm saying that
As a nature, druid, I'd be
Yeah.
very offended by that.
Sylvanas and all that good stuff. But I just said that as a joke, but it depends on the circumstance. I don't think he would consider, if the soul went to Asmodeus, I don't think that he'd care. Does that make sense? Because it's something so insignificant to him.
Well, like you said, it would also depend on the soul. For instance, okay, in the Ancient World Reborn, you guys were trying to prevent Tiamat from coming from Avernus, which was the hills, and if you read in that book, some of the devils don't want that. Some of them do.
Yeah.
So, I guess it would all depend. Okay, for instance, say Amadeus had a chance for someone like Orid or Luda's soul. You would think if you would use divine intervention, he wouldn't let that happen.
If it's something that he'd covet, he'd keep it.
Okay, so then how do you deal with not giving that player something like that once they've asked for something?
If it was Asmodeus getting the soul, he'd give it to him after he's turned into a devil.
So he would corrupt the soul and send it to him.
Yeah.
So
you wouldn't get a whole piece.
Once again, Grit Boy, Mr. Wonder, you've rolled for some divine intervention. What are you asking for? To smite Demogorgon. So we just answered that.
No, you said help to defeat.
But he answered it.
No, I said straight out smite.
Okay, would you allow that?
Well, what is a smite? A smite's a blow.
No, I mean, I want
To strike him down.
You said smite.
Okay.
Yours, Edward, was smite.
But most people say like in a sentence like that.
Well, yeah, but what would happen was like the cavern would rip apart and a giant fist would come down and deck him.
Depending on your deity, that might happen.
Yeah.
Depending on what you do. Now, see, I would be fine with that as a divine intervention because destroying a demon's body on the material plane, it's going to reconstitute itself. I would allow that. I have no problem with that. But I would make it to the point where, because, okay, in that point of the game, that's supposed to be a challenge. You're not supposed to fight it.
Oh, you're supposed to be running.
You're supposed to run. But that's where I would do something like, all right, just say, sure, I smite Demogorgon. Silverbird comes down and boom, lays him low. But I would leave something there for the player to deal with. For instance, like you smite him, but there's just that crack between the prime material plane and gaping maw where a demon escapes, and then you would have to battle it. It's almost Demogorgon's last fuck you before he leaves. And then I would, just to give you something to do there. But yeah, I would allow something like that. I'd have no issue with that. Because I always know he could come back. So, I don't have any problem with that. How would you handle that?
Like I said, I would injure Demogorgon. He wouldn't be defeated. Not at that level, because that would get rid of like half the book.
But like I said, he could always reconstitute himself and come back.
Not if you if you read through the thing, they have to travel the Styx through the hells. That's why devils believe that they're the heroes of the universe.
Oh, then that's different from the book from the Dritz novels.
Yeah.
Because Far, or whatever you want to call it, it's a barrier that separates the abyss.
Phasers?
Yes, whatever it is, from the abyss from the prime
Phasers?
material plane. So they're basically just walking in from the abyss. So that's why I was like, sure. Because I try to tie a lot of the books into when we play, just stuff that goes on there. So that's how I would have done
What
it.
has the
It actually,
Yes.
like in the adventure, the Phasers is simply magic rock and stone.
Yeah, that's where
Yeah.
it comes from, yeah.
It's
But
just that it's kind of anti-magic in a sense, where it can block magic and stuff, but it's being corrupted.
So that's kind of changed a little from the books. So once you're done with this, I'm going to have to read up on that.
Yeah.
Cool. So there you go. That's two different ways to deal with divine intervention. Like I said, a lot of it depends on your deity.
Yeah.
So I would suggest to players, if you're somebody, for instance, like Vesper, who's a cunt, watch your divine interventions because it might have drawbacks, you know.
One thing, if it's Mistra, meteor swarm every fucking time.
Really.
Yeah.
Okay. What
Makes
if
sense.
it's Tempest?
Tempest.
God of battle. God of thunder.
There is an item like the Horn of Valhalla. Barbarians running out of the mist.
Cool. I like that. Yeah. So I guess that wraps up this whole divine intervention. I'm JVD.
Smiley.
Keep the dice rolling, guys. Everyone, Villains Man here. I'm JVD.
I'm Smiley, and today we're with blah 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 blah.
Throw the Richard time out. Never gathered yourself. Pretty woo sound.